Hello there. My name is Riley Chow, and I am from Gold Derby, and I'm here with Luca Giliberti, Rob Licuria, Charles Bright, Matt Noble. Hopefully I didn't forget anybody. There are a lot of us here, and we are here to discuss our final Oscar nomination predictions. This is the Friday before nominations are announced on Monday. Rob, I'm going to start with you. First of all, happy birthday, Rob, everybody. Okay. And so, Rob, I'm going to start by posing a question to you that you inexplicably posed several times during the Golden Globes pre-show, and that is, what about the two popes? You do not have Jonathan Pryce or Anthony Hopkins predicted, or the film for Best Picture, and then you have it winning screenplay, which is a whole other matter, even though it was snubbed by the Writers Guild at the expense of Booksmart. So what's your obsession/hatred of the two popes? Explain yourself.
Okay. Well, this is probably not a good look for me, but just have to forgive me because it's my birthday, right? But I did forget about adapted screenplay and making that change. So I will be making that change because for a while there, I thought the two popes had a really good chance in that category to actually maybe even win. But that was about maybe 4 weeks ago. And so I just, for some reason, it just hasn't been saving my changes in that category. So forget that. I don't think the two popes is going to win screenplay anymore. And I do think that we're going to see a real problem for some of those Netflix titles when the Oscar nominations are announced. And in my opinion, I think the two popes is probably the one of those films that will suffer. And I think it's just because there's so many films in contention this year that are good. So I think it was a really good year for film. And so I started thinking about actor and supporting actor. And I just really couldn't find room for either of those performances. And we have to admit the two popes has really underperformed recently in terms of precursors. That's my perception. So in supporting actor, I really wanted to put a bit of weight behind Song Kang-ho. I think there could be a surprise there for Parasite. And because of that, I had to find room and I couldn't bear to take out Tom Hanks. So that explains that. Then in actor, what a ridiculous category. It's so competitive. And again, Taron Egerton's been on the rise. And I can't bear again to take out Antonio Banderas. And so I thought, well, Leonardo DiCaprio's not missing out, I think. And therefore, who's going to suffer? It's going to be Jonathan Pryce. And so there's been a bit of a kind of a confluence of events where I've now noticed that the two popes is completely out of the top categories as far as I'm concerned. And yet, yes, you have very rightly mentioned that I've kind of stuffed up in adapted screenplay. I will be making that change. Hopefully it will actually save so that it will make a bit more sense. But does that explain where I'm at? There's other reasons for why I keep seeing the two popes suffer.
I see. Now, Matt, you are in the middle of updating your predictions, but you still have the two popes in all of these above the line categories. So what's going on there?
Look, I'm tossing up with the two popes. I think the two popes is a very interesting film in that it did very well with Globe nominations. It's also, I think, Anthony Hopkins and Jonathan Pryce are the type of actors that Academy members really like. Veterans. They've done, they're acclaimed. They've been working in the industry a long time. I think they're the kind of actors people want to vote for. And it's sort of the type of film, simple premise, all that sort of thing. So it's in my Best Picture predictions, but it's in 10th. With the way they work out, like the vote counting, and you need a minimum requirement to make it into Best Picture, that sort of means that usually we end up with 8 or 9 Best Picture nominees. So, if my predictions are all right, which is a big assumption, it would mean the two popes might just miss out on getting a Best Picture nomination since I've got it in my 10th spot. Jonathan Pryce and Anthony Hopkins, I sort of see as those veterans that will get votes and people in the Academy will like, and they're the center, it's the two popes, they're the centerpiece of the film. However, I'm becoming very wary of them because I think, and this is why I'm tempted to maybe change my predictions away from them, is the way Oscar voting works with the preferential voting. The big question I was asking myself, particularly for those last couple of slots, is who has the passion? Who's going to get those number 1, number 2 votes, which is why I think in supporting actor, Song Kang-ho from Parasite has a really good chance of maybe not getting a whole bunch of votes, but people love that movie so much, he might get that amount. So I don't know how much you want to get into the preferential voting model and stuff like that. But the way it sort of works is that all the number one votes are counted and they redistribute the voters to get the least. So as soon as you get over that 20% of votes, you're in, you're nominated. So that's what's having me worried about the two popes. I think Anthony Hopkins and Jonathan Pryce will have a broad amount of support from the membership, but they might not have that passionate. They might get on a lot of ballots, but maybe not in that fourth and fifth. But they might be in that fourth and fifth on a lot of people's ballots, and it'll allow someone like Antonio Banderas, that people who love that performance, can get in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Charlie, I'm going to go over to you. You guys all have Tom Hanks in your supporting actor predictions, but haven't you learned by now not to predict Tom Hanks for the Oscars?
I feel like I should have known that by now, but I'm foolishly keeping him in, though. That he's someone who I very easily would probably be the first. If I have to adjust my predictions, he would probably be the one I take out.
You have him in second right now.
I do have him in second right now.
You could see him winning.
No. I have to change that. So, yeah, I just don't make me think about Tom Hanks, because this is just too ridiculous right now. He's baking it into everywhere, just like he did 6 years ago for Captain Phillips, and it feels like he still might miss. So, I mean, your guess is as good as mine on that one.
Okay, let's hear from Luca. Now, all of you guys have Jennifer Lopez in second or third place. I have her in fifth. She was just snubbed at the BAFTAs. And how are you feeling about her after that?
Well, I have been concerned about Jennifer Lopez since the very beginning. I always thought she was going to get in at the Globes, thought she had a very good getting at Critics' Choice and at the SAG Awards, and never really predicted her for the BAFTA. I didn't think the British Academy would go for her, and they do have a bit of a diversity problem, so it really doesn't surprise me. But even if she had gotten that, I would still be worried about her, because Hustlers is not Academy fare. I am very concerned about the fact that there will be people in the Academy who will sit down and watch that movie and might say this is not an Academy performance, or it's not a performance worthy of a Best Supporting Actress nomination. Now, I really hope this is not the case, because I think she does incredible work in this movie, and she's not just playing the stripper. She's doing much more than that, and I think that's very important to say. The good news for her is that her BAFTA snub might not be that bad, considering Margot Robbie was nominated twice for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and for Bombshell, and at the Oscars, they don't allow someone to be nominated in the same category twice. So perhaps Jennifer Lopez could just fill that slot. And what might also help her is that this category has been wide open since the very beginning, because Laura Dern and Margot Robbie for Bombshell have been everywhere. Then Jennifer Lopez was everywhere as well, except for BAFTA. And those last two slots have just gone to so many different people. We've had Kathy Bates, we've had Annette Bening, we've had Nicole Kidman, we've had Florence Pugh. So considering that this category is so wide open, I think Jennifer Lopez still stands a good chance of getting nominated, but I don't feel, certain about it at all. I'm praying for her. I really am.
Okay, Luca, let's stay with you. I feel like the most intriguing prediction of yours above the line is Greta Gerwig in Best Director. So can you explain that one?
That's another prediction I'm not confident about, because when Greta Gerwig was nominated for Lady Bird in Best Director, she was able to get that DGA nom, which she wasn't able to get this year. However, Little Women didn't hit theaters until December 25th. It's a late-breaking movie, and with this condensed Oscar schedule, everything is a bit different than it has been the last few years. I think Little Women peaked at the pretty well at the box office. People love Greta Gerwig. This movie has been receiving acclaim from fans, from critics, so from everyone. And I still think there is that, I hate to use this term, but that female vote where they want to get a woman into the Best Director race. I think she deserves it. A lot of people think she deserves this nomination, so I don't want anyone to think she's only getting in because of the fact that she is a woman. There is a lot. She does incredible work in this movie. And I don't feel confident because she didn't make DGA, and Taika Waititi did, and Todd Phillips made the director, the Golden Globe lineup. So she's by no means a lock, but it's almost like a hope prediction at this point. I do have faith in the Academy that they will recognize that other groups have so far.
Okay, Rob, speaking of token minorities, we all have the 4 blonde actresses in lead actress. You know, we've all got Charlize Theron, Scarlett Johansson, who else is there? Renee Zellweger and Saoirse Ronan. And then we're all arguing about, you know, who will be the token minority nomination. BAFTA subverted that somehow. But you actually do not have Charlize Theron in there. So why do you not believe in Bombshell?
Wow, you're talking in absolutes, and I just love that, as always, Riley. But I've got to say that I did agonize a little over this one when I made these predictions updates about maybe 4 days ago, and it took me a while to realize that I had to find some room, because I don't think there's going to be a token minority. I think there's going to be 2 minorities in this category, because, well, I hope so. But like, you know how we always feel like we're so sure of what's going to happen, and then nominations come out and there are always going to be surprises, right? Always. And like, for example, you know, I'm picking some really left field stuff in the below the line categories, which I'm so excited about. In this one, I just think that Awkwafina and Lupita Nyong'o have enough support to probably make it in. I'm going to be devastated if especially Lupita doesn't make it in. I think she gave the performance of 2019, to me even more so than Joaquin Phoenix, which is saying something because he was amazing too. But so I had to then get rid of one of the blondies. And so then I started doing it by a process of elimination. So Renee Zellweger, I don't think is going to miss out. Although personally, if it was up to me, she probably would have, and nothing against her performance. Scarlett Johansson in Marriage Story, I think, does enough. Saoirse Ronan, I think, does enough in Little Women. That's doing really well, and I think we're going to be surprised by how much support there is for that film. So then we're left with Bombshell, which has slightly underperformed apart from the SAGs. And so I don't really put as much credence in the SAGs as some other people do. I've seen some divergence from what they've picked compared to what's happened in the last 3 or 4 years. For example, you know, some of those ensemble winners, or some of those Best Picture winners, have not been nominated for ensemble recently. And so I thought, okay, maybe Charlize Theron can be one of those big shock surprises, because people really like her performance and have said so much about how she really kind of nails it in terms of the way she carries herself, and particularly because of all that great makeup and hairstyling. But I just thought, well, you've got to kind of draw the line somewhere, don't you? You have to eventually take people out if you want to include others, and that's what I've done. And I'm probably going to suffer for it, but I'm prepared to kind of stand by those 5 until nominations morning.
Yeah.
I'm also intrigued on the actor side, how you have Leonardo DiCaprio in 5th. So can you talk about why you're feeling a little bit apprehensive about him?
Yeah, so I think the film's going to do very well that day, but I just have this sinking feeling that there isn't a lot of urgency. There's not a sense of urgency for rewarding Leonardo these days like there used to be. And those other 4 actors, I think, are really locked in. I honestly don't think Antonio is in as much trouble as many other people believe he is. I totally understand the argument, though, because, you know, he's in a foreign language film, and perhaps maybe it hasn't been as widely seen. But on the flip side to that argument is it's an Almodovar film, and he's Antonio Banderas, so it's not like he's a nobody. So I think he's in. I think Taron Egerton's done enough. He has really campaigned very hard for this nomination, and I think it's well deserved. I think Rocketman is a really popular film, and he is wonderful in it. Adam Driver and Joaquin Phoenix are completely and utterly locked. I'd be very, very shocked if either of them missed out. And so then I'm left with Leonardo. I still think he'll make it in. I just think he's in 5th place. I don't think there's no way, in my opinion, that he can probably win this. And I think Brad Pitt kind of steals some of his thunder, and I think he's getting most of the praise for the acting in this film. And that's it. So, he's still in. There's still a lot of people who are going to miss out, for example, Jonathan Pryce. But I think 5th is better than nothing. So that's where I'm at.
All right. Matt, thanks for waiting on the side of the screen there. Feel free to disable your camera when you're not talking. But before you do that, I want to find out why you have Robert De Niro in your predictions. I actually love that, because I also have him in Best Actor, but nobody else does, which is understandable because he has somehow missed all across the season.
Yeah, so Robert De Niro, he is also someone that I am unsure about what to do. I'm not sure if he'll have that passion vote, a bit in a similar boat to Jonathan Pryce. But The Irishman is a film that Academy voters are going to see. There's a lot of love for Robert De Niro in the industry. I could see The Irishman getting ticked off a lot across the board. It's looking weaker and weaker, though, as different awards are announced. So that sort of works a bit against the passion argument, and it also works a bit against the passion argument, and it also look, it might mean too that he can't win it, Robert De Niro. I'm pretty confident he's not going to win the thing, but he might just squeak on in there. But I think I'm going to have to reassess this category and just think through who are those voters that are getting, and who are those members, who are those contenders that voters are going to put their number one and number two. Who will have the passion behind them to get in? Will it be Robert De Niro because The Irishman's going to be well seen across the board and get a lot of votes? Be well seen across the board, or will it be someone like Taron Egerton where there might be more excitement behind a specific performance? And I think they're the questions we need to think about over the next sort of 24, 48 hours.
Okay, now Charlie, you have Xiao Shi Shen in your supporting actress predictions, which is kind of like Robert De Niro in that she has gotten Critics' Choice and then has not really been present in the rest of the precursor nominations. I would say the big difference there is that she's not Robert De Niro. So why do you have her in your supporting actress predictions, even though the film missed PGA, SAG, she wasn't nominated for a Globe or a BAFTA?
I think that even though the film has missed those particular precursors, it still has been well seen, and we have seen Awkwafina get in on several critics groups and several other things. And I think there is going to be a lot of love for this movie. I do have Xiao Shi Shen in fifth place, though. For me personally, it is kind of like a hope diction because I know her chances have really dwindled throughout the season. But I do think for the people that have seen this movie, my God, they come off. How can you not come away just absolutely adoring this performance? It's out of this world, and I think that I do think there's going to be a strong. She is going to have those passion votes. And I think that's going to play a huge factor for her if she does in fact get in.
All right, boys, that's all I got for Above the Line. So who has something that they need to get off their chest about these top 8 categories?
Actress, I gotta go with because
me too.
I actually just had an interaction with one of our experts. I was talking to Tariq Khan from Fox News, and because I had just, if you haven't seen on the website, shameless self-plug, that I just had a piece go up about Alfred Woodard's performance in Clemency, and Tariq told me that he has Alfred Woodard in his 5, and I just replied back to him, "Don't play with my emotions like that." And but he thinks that there's going to be an opening there. I would love to see that happen, but I think that's going to be a very, very tall order for performance that has been missing, even in places where you might think it would stand a good chance. I still think Lupita is probably above her. I think Awkwafina is probably above her. So I'm very apprehensive. I would love to put it in, but that's just going to make me even more devastated when it probably doesn't happen on Monday morning.
Yeah, and to add to the Best Actress race, I think another person we should talk about is Cynthia Revo, who did get Critics' Choice. She got the Golden Globe and she got a nomination, but then she's left out at BAFTA, and I think that's actually a big deal. I mean, I already mentioned earlier that we all know BAFTA has a diversity problem, which they've already addressed now, and that might have been one of the reasons why they didn't nominate her, or she wasn't nominated. But she was nominated last year for Rising Star. She is a Brit, and she should have been able to get this nomination. And the fact that she didn't, I think, is very important, because last year, John David Washington and Emily Blunt were in the same situation. They got everything up until then, but were snubbed at BAFTA. And then both of them didn't get the Oscar nomination. So that's why I took out Cynthia Revo 2 days ago. And I'm really not sure what to do with that 5th slot. I currently do have Lupita Nyong'o in because everyone knows it's my favorite performance of the entire year. And I think that SAG nomination is very, which is, in my opinion, where the Toni Collette comparisons need to stop, because Toni Collette, while she swept the critics' prizes like Lupita is, she did not get that SAG nomination, which is incredibly important because SAG-AFTRA shares members with the Academy, which is why this nomination is such a big deal. But I feel like the Golden Globe win for Awkwafina is also very important. Even though the HFPA doesn't share members with the Academy, it might have given her a little boost. And from what I've heard, a lot of Academy members didn't actually mark off their ballots until those last 2 days because of this condensed schedule, because of how little time they actually had to do so. I wouldn't be surprised to see Awkwafina show up, and I would be elated because The Farewell is such a great movie and she gives such a great performance. And for her to get her first nomination would be very nice.
I've got a category that I wouldn't mind chatting about. Best Director. I feel like that's such a loaded category, and there's so many different I keep on wanting to take people out to bring other people in, but I think Taika Waititi for Jojo Rabbit is a great example of someone else who I was pretty confident was oh, look, Jojo Rabbit, the critic reception wasn't that good. I'll probably move him out at some point. But then he just keeps on getting nominated everywhere. And I love Jojo Rabbit. It's a great movie. So I've sort of kept him in, even though I was sort of assuming I'd be taking him out as different precursors and stuff came out. It's just, and now I'm Sam Mendes, who was out of my predictions, I've now put him up to first because I actually think it's the most directorial performance, and I'm wondering if this year we're going to have a Best Picture, Best Director split. So I'm just curious as to maybe not even who are people predicting for that category, but who are people not predicting for that category. I've just taken out Noah Baumbach for Marriage Story because I could see that being one that doesn't get those passionate votes and things. I think maybe Greta Gerwig will just miss out because I just wonder partly too because there have been previous Little Women films made, if that's going to be the deciding factor. It seems less original, although I think the way that she structured the narrative of that story was brilliant, and I'd love to see her nominated. Who do people have missing out on Best Director?
I'm missing out with I have Gerwig missing out. I have Taika Waititi missing out, and I have Noah Baumbach missing out. I have the Globe 5 in there for director. It just seems like a pretty simple thing. I think, it's a really tough hill to climb, but usually we don't we don't get a 5 for 5 lineup with DGA. So I kind of feel like I think as pleasantly surprised as I was earlier this week when Taika Waititi got that nomination, I'm kind of feeling like it might not transfer to the Oscars. Though if it were, that would be stunning. But I do have. Go ahead.
Do we usually have a 5 for 5 director lineup with the Globes?
No, I don't think so.
It's probably happened. I don't have the information on my fingertips right now. But it feels like something that has probably happened. It just doesn't happen that often. So I'm just, but I think that's just, I think it's a safe bet for it. And especially after, after Todd Phillips, he may have missed DGA, but he got in at BAFTA, and that's certainly something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's given me some pause, actually. All those arguments that Charlie just made, I totally agree with. But I just think, thank
you.
The problem is, I took out Noah Baumbach just now because I'm kind of now, revisiting stuff while we're talking. But I was actually thinking, should I just do what the Globes did or do what DGA did? Ultimately, I'm kind of heading towards where Matt was, which is Taika Waititi does have a lot of support, and that film seems to be quite popular within, the Academy's ranks. But that BAFTA nomination for Todd Phillips does give me some pause. And I just think ultimately when it all comes out in the wash next week, we'll probably then be able to argue, okay, so Joker wasn't as loved as we thought, or Parasite was a bit more loved than we thought, or, Taika Waititi, he was able to kind of follow up his DGA nomination with a nomination here. The directors branch of the Academy is very, they're a bit hoity-toity, they do like to go for things that are a bit left field, and that's why I think, we could see something else. Like, can you imagine if we see something really left field in that category? It'd be so exciting. It's probably not likely, but an Almodovar or something to that effect would really excite me.
Yeah.
I just think we're probably this race. This whole season, once again, has become very same, hasn't it? There's a bunch of people who are all in the running, and we know what's going to happen in each of those. And I want to see those ridiculous left field choices, and hopefully we'll see some of them. And we'll probably talk about that a bit later when we focus more on the below the lines, which is where I think all the excitement is at the moment.
Yeah. And what about just like a crazy suggestion of Lulu Wang for The Farewell? Just like if there's just a lot of passionate love behind that. Like I think it's very unlikely, but we're talking about it getting a Best Actress nomination, screenplay, it could just all fall that way. I think it's very unlikely, but it is sort of the kind of this left field thing. You just got this passionate support. I think if that happened, The Farewell would be getting a Best Picture nomination as well.
Yeah.
Especially to say, not necessarily. I mean, it's happened a couple of times with this expanded field where we've had Best Director nominations that don't get nominated for Best Picture. The first one being Ben Miller for Foxcatcher, and then we had that again last year with Pavel Pawlikowski for Cold War.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that should not be counted out. That it could happen, and I don't even think a Best Picture, and I don't even think a Best Picture nomination would be necessary to see Lulu Wang get recognized in the directing category. But then again, we could also see.
Yeah, and
also, I would keep an eye out for who's the other two. There were two other people I was thinking of: Jay Roach for Bombshell, and James Mangold for Ford v Ferrari. Especially Mangold. That's a very very well directed movie, and I think that's one that we could possibly see. And who knows? Maybe even like Terrence Malick for A Hidden Life, but I don't think that's going to
happen. Now we're getting crazy. All right, because then I can say Jordan Peele for us, and that's not going to happen either.
One more name I would mention are the Safdie brothers for Uncut Gems.
Yeah.
There are people out there who are actually predicting them because the director's branch would go for something like that. I'm not bold enough to do that. My problem with Todd Phillips is that even though he got the Globe and the BAFTA nods, when a movie is divisive, like Joker is, like Green Book was last year and Three Billboards was the year before, they get a lot of nominations, including Best Picture. They do well overall, but they miss this they miss in Best Director. And that's where I currently am with Joker. And the fact that he didn't get the DGA doesn't really concern me that much because Peter Farrelly, for example, last year got DGA and then missed the Oscar. So I don't always think they necessarily are an indicator. But something just tells me that Todd Phillips is not going to be one of those people that branch decides to put into the top 5. I feel like they will go for a different choice. I currently, as Riley mentioned before, I have Greta Gerwig, but I could see it going to so many different people, and I'm really ready for a surprise. And I wouldn't be completely shocked if even our top 4, who've gotten in everywhere, if one of them missed. I wouldn't be who, because I think all of them are pretty close to locks. But this branch does the weirdest things that I honestly would not be surprised to even see one of them miss. But as I said, I could not say who.
And as we sort of said, with the hoity-toity directors, Joker is a sort of supervillain, like DC film. And, we saw Black Panther did very well at the Oscars last year, but couldn't get into that Best Director category. So I wonder if that will be sort of, look, it's very artistically made. He dances in slow motion a few times and stuff, but that could be just a slight barrier that will make the difference in a very close race of people putting Todd Phillips at the top of their list. And
I also think the thing that goes, the other thing that, and it's weird I'm saying this because I am predicting Phillips to get in, but one thing that that I think should be taken note of is that him and Peter Farrelly have had a very similar career trajectory. In terms of being known for comedies, raunchy comedies, before doing this more serious fare. And if that was one of the reasons why Peter Farrelly wasn't able to crack the Best Director lineup last year, then that could definitely very well be the fate of Phillips in this race.
So,
all right. Yeah, you guys had a lot of thoughts on that category. I kind of made up my mind a very long time ago about that. So, Rob, let's jump below the line here and get to best costume. You've got Downton Abbey over Rocket Man, which I really like because BAFTA snubbed Rocket Man in this category. Yeah. And they snubbed Downton Abbey too, but BAFTA was never that kind to Downton Abbey compared to the Emmys. So can you walk us through what your thoughts are there?
Well, you're right about Downton Abbey. The BAFTAs have never been a fan of that show. So let's forget that. However, it's really hurt me to not put in Rocket Man. And I think the BAFTA snub gave me some kind of I thought, okay, well, maybe that's actually a fair enough argument that Rocket Man is not as strong there as people think it is. I think it's just going to get Taron Egerton and probably that's it. Although it may have some chances in sound mixing, but at this point, I think it's going to get one. I think it's going to underperform generally, which is a real shame. I think Little Women is up there. I think Dolomite is My Name is in there, and I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Jojo Rabbit are too. So you're kind of going to once again run out of slots. There's plenty of other films that could absolutely make a running in this category. However, it's not going to be easy because those films seem to be quite strong. Maybe Downton Abbey is a complete bust and it'll get nothing. That's certainly possible. But if anything, it will get this one. And that's really where I'm headed. That's really the only reason. So does anybody else have anything that's not in those five plus Rocket Man that could make it in? And by the way, we really need to talk about cinematography too, because that one's doing my head in. But before we do, Riley, what about you? Have you got anything different in that category apart from Rocket Man?
Sorry. Charlie and I have The Irishman in costumes. My thinking there is...
I took that out.
Oh, you took it out?
Yes, I took that out, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You're on your own, Riley.
Downton Abbey, so...
You're on your own.
Get with the program, man.
Yeah, all right. I think it's updated 41 minutes ago, so... Anyway, The Irishman, I just figure, is one of those big movies like The Revenant where it might miss out on nominations throughout the season, but then by the time we get to the Oscars, it'll just hit across the board. That's why I've got Robert De Niro in. That's why I've got it in costumes, even though I have never had faith in The Irishman winning much of anything. I don't have Downton Abbey because it seems like that was kind of forgotten a while ago and is maybe not in the conversation at all. But I could see it. All right, and
the thing I think in this category specifically, I think you always have to remember is that during the nomination phase, it's just the people in that field voting for that, and I think that so something that may be considered a bit more niche, like a Downton Abbey or Dolomite is My Name, could get in over something like The Irishman, which. As great as the costumes are, it's just very generic, detailed costumes for the time that the film is showing. There's nothing that's really extravagant from what I can remember of that 3.5-hour movie. So I think that something like Downton Abbey, definitely the period aspect, and even Dolomite is My Name, because they are such a part of that experience of watching those movies, of taking that in. And I think that's something that's lacking with The Irishman that's going to hurt it in this category.
Okay, so Rob mentioned cinematography, and cinematography is a race that I would love to see shaken up at the Oscars. I don't understand how Ferrari has been nominated everywhere across the season. It got BAFTA, ASC, Critics' Choice, Satellite, of course. They loved that movie over there. And the same with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and The Irishman. I feel like these are films that are in the cinematography race because they are in the Oscar race overall. But I would hope that they don't get that many number one votes when it comes to cinematographers voting on cinematography. I think, Rob, you and we have a Portrait of Lady on Fire, and Charlie has that one too now. I've also got Parasite. So, Rob, what's going on here?
Well, here's the thing. So I was predicting Parasite for the ASC and it missed out. And then all over film Twitter and the bubble, there was a lot of talk about, if you didn't predict these five, you're obviously an idiot because these are the five that were the only five that could ever have been nominated. And the same thing will happen at the Oscars. And I think that's insane. You look at past nominees in this category, like last year, Never Look Away, that came out of nowhere. And then you see a lot of foreign films like The Grand Master Philippe was Sword in 2013. And obviously Mr. Turner for Dick Pope. And there's a bunch of very interesting films nominated in this category, and they do tend to nominate more foreign language films than other branches do. And so I started thinking about, okay, I had Parasite in there for a very long time. And then I took it out and I went with consensus. And then I decided, no, I can't do it. I just don't think it's going to happen. I believe 1917 is in, and so is Joker. And it appears that The Irishman and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood have a lot of support in this category in terms of what people think will be nominated. And it left me with the fifth slot. And I just thought, well, it makes some sense to me that Claire Mathon has really performed quite well over this season. She, I can't quite remember what all the precursors she has at the moment, but there's a whole bunch. I was looking at this the other day, and I could probably pull it up on my screen while I'm chatting. But
like
it's pretty
impressive.
Yeah, that's right. New York, Los Angeles, and National. Is that what you're? Yeah, like that's really impressive. And so I think because of that, like, okay, that's not the only reason why she should be nominated, but she's got a lot of really, really interesting awards behind her in this season. And that film has been placed on quite a lot of top 10 lists as well. Like, not mine. I didn't really think it was that great, but I thought her cinematography was. And so I think if there's going to be a surprise, I think that could be one of them. And I'm hoping that we see stuff like that. I just can't bear to see the same names over and over again in every category. Like, every category is very different. And there are some terrible films that have really great editing, you know? So, like, we don't have to just nominate the same shit in every category.
My problem with predicting Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I actually had it in my lineup probably a few weeks ago, but I've actually heard from a lot of people now, or seen a lot of people saying that not a lot of Academy members have actually received screeners for this movie, or at least I've heard that the screeners went out extremely late, and that is very worrisome for its chances in this category. I could absolutely see it happen if they did have the option to see the movie. But at the moment, I'm just going with the safe choices, which include Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and The Irishman. Though I agree with what Riley and Rob said, which is that, you know, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is great. It's, you know, beautifully. I don't think among the top 5 best shot movies of the year. I think there's more interesting cinematography out there that will be overlooked for one of these top 3 best picture contenders. And I think that's quite a shame. These people did an incredible job last year at nominating very, you know, out of left field choices. So I really hope they do the same this year, because there are way too many interesting movies out there to just nominate the best picture contenders or the top 5 best picture contenders. We really don't need that in this category.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood looks like a sketchy contender to me, also in Best Editing. And I don't have it predicted there, and neither does Charlie. So, Charlie, why don't you have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in editing?
It's runtime for one. I think that there are going to be a lot of... I don't know. It just feels like, I think, like, for even people that like the movie, that was definitely a criticism that seems to be very at the film. And I think that there's going to be more interesting choices to go with. I have Ford v Ferrari winning right now, but I also do have 1917, even though Birdman, with its one-shot technique, wasn't able to crack that. But it's weird. I ragged on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for the runtime, but I do have The Irishman in there, so take that with what you will.
All right, Matt, we haven't heard from you in a while. What do you have to say about these races?
Yeah, they're tricky. Editing. 1917. Like, is 1917 one shot? Like, will that factor in with voters with the editing award? Like, maybe.
Yes.
Like, was it edited? I'm sure there is an editor. I'm so sorry if he's watching this chat. And I would imagine editing a one-shot film is a lot more challenging than, like, you would think, right? Like, I bet there is things that he had, or he or she, sorry, I don't know who the editor was for the film, that they had to do, that we would not believe the intricacies and things that they need to go into. But I just wonder if on a visceral level, people will go, one shot, wasn't edited. The same way, like, on the flip side, like, and it sort of mirrors what Charlie was saying, was The Irishman, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Long run times. Like, you know, they didn't take much out, which, again, isn't really what editing is. It's about, like, sort of, that's somewhat a directorial decision rather than an editor decision, but I wonder if that will play on people too. That being said, I've got 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and The Irishman all in. I think this is a good Ford versus Ferrari category too. I think, you know, you got car races, cutting in and out of things, inside the car, outside the car. Like, I think that is a very editing show film. And I think also the Joker, the fact you got sort of some action, but also, like, it's very arty. I think there's a good mix of tones in the Joker that will play well editing. But that means I've got Parasite missing out, which I sort of feel like that should be in there. So I don't know what to drop, though, from the 5 that I've got. Like, I sort of tend to agree with you, Riley, that maybe Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is maybe the one that, like, you don't think editing. It's more just because it's a Best Picture contender that I've got it in. I think you could say the same for The Irishman, to be honest.
And last year we had Green Book nominated in this category, and that's another example of one of those top 3 Best Picture contenders or strong Best Picture contenders getting in to a category, even though it was not, you know, a big editorial showcase, which is why I just have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and The Irishman both getting in. My problem with 1917 is actually not only Birdman, but also Roma last year, which wasn't able to get into Best Editing because its editing was very subtle. And the editing in 1917 is incredibly subtle, so it would not be surprising to me to see the movie snubbed in this category. And the reason why I do have Parasite in is, again, because it's such a strong contender and because a lot of people have actually praised its editing, and I think the movie will perform very well below the line, better than most people are probably expecting. So I do have that one in here, and I also have Joker because I think it's, you know, the crafts in that movie are so incredibly well done, and I feel like it'll be able to get into this category as well. I would watch out for Jojo Rabbit because it did get that ACE nomination, even though that was for the comedy category, and I do think that movie is coming on quite strong, but I don't have any room for it right now in my top 5.
I am wondering about Jojo Rabbit, which is probably my favorite film of the year. So, like, I love it, and it's done so well throughout the awards. It has consistently done well at the Guilds. It's overperformed what I was even anticipating. But I do wonder, like, there is a chance, and there are films that do well in the Guild season, and then Oscar nominations come out, and they underperform. Like, you know, the Guilds have created a false sense of sort of security or strength for that film. And I do wonder which is the film, and Jojo Rabbit could be it. It could be something else that underperforms compared to how it's done on the Guild run. And I think because the reviews for Jojo Rabbit were somewhat mixed, it does leave itself a bit vulnerable to not get that and underperform when you've got preferential voting. I hope that's not the case. I hope it does really well. On the flip side, well, maybe not the flip side, it's not good. Parasite, which has also done really well throughout the Guild season. I just wonder how well, like, Parasite could have a really knockout morning, because I think, like or not, I don't like Parasite, and I wasn't someone who was wrapped in that film when I first saw it. I'm very keen to see it again, to see how I suggest it, because it was so original and it was dynamic, even though I didn't, it's probably not my favorite film of the year, but it does seem like people who love Parasite. It does seem that love is got a large-ish constituency, and that means it could do very well in this preferential system where, you know, people who love Parasite are going to put it number 1 for picture, but also number 1 in their particular branch. I guess the question is how wide is the love for Parasite? Does it coalesce in particular branches? Like, you know, do directors and editors love Parasite, but other categories don't? Like, that's, I guess, the question is sort of, how does Parasite's love play out? But I'm very curious to see what the total will be for Jojo Rabbit and what the total will be for Parasite. I'm fairly confident it'll be higher for Parasite, but I think it'll be interesting to see the Academy's sort of like love for both of those films.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and normally I do try to pick out some film that's near the top and think that it'll underperform. This year I think I'm I have all the big films kind of hitting everything, and I've just taken out nominations for more fringe contenders like The Two Popes or A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. So we'll see how that plays out. Let's jump over to Best Original Song. Now, for once, I would love to see just like an all-pop lineup. You know, like this year, I want to see Dua Lipa nominated, Zara Larsson, Rita Ora. I want that song that has Ariana Grande, Miley Cyrus, and Lana Del Rey all together. This song category, I don't know. I just listened to all of them, and it was what it was. We all pretty much have the same 5, except for Rob. You've got Speechless from Aladdin, which I love, and you also have the Parasite song, A Glass of Soju, and you're missing the music branch's beloved Diane Warren, and you're also missing Cynthia Revo. So tell us, should we be expecting some surprises in that category?
Yes and no. So I've been kind of going back and forth on this one for a few weeks, to be honest, because it's a category that I actually care about. And for most people who know me, because I have little kids, and so I just like to make a joke about the Frozen songs being in like this stuff of my nightmares. But it goes the same for a lot of the other kind of songs that are pitched at a younger audience, like Speechless. And when that film came out, it wasn't particularly beloved, that film, but the song was singled out as one of the highlights from Aladdin. And I think it's a much better song than the original song from the Lion King remake. And I really am hoping that these musicians in this branch actually recognize Speechless. I think it is the best song from a film this year. So that being said, I think Into the Unknown is absolutely a contender here as well, just like Let It Go was. It's obviously not the pop cultural phenomenon that Let It Go was, and maybe that's because there are 2 really good songs from Frozen 2, the other one being Show Yourself, which wasn't submitted. So then we start looking into other songs. I'm not totally sold on the Elton John song. I really am not, but I've put it in number 1 because I just think that it's a kind of lazy choice for the Academy just to give this prize to Elton John. So even though I did say before that Rocket Man was going to get 1 nomination, I forgot that I had it here as well. And then A Glass of Soju is my me making an attempt at a Parasite doing very well on Oscar nominations morning. I think it will either really underperform and piss off a lot of people, especially those of us in the bubble, or it will really overperform to maybe the surprise of a lot of people who didn't really dig it that much. And so I think A Glass of Soju is absolutely in contention, but make no mistake, I'm not feeling confident about these nominations at all, particularly about the 2 in the last 2 slots for me, which is Speechless and A Glass of Soju. And so, like, Diane Warren, she gets nominated every year. If she read out the phone book, she would be nominated. And so there's also that Wild Rose song that I'm hearing a lot of noise about. I don't buy it myself, but that would not surprise me at all. That film seems to be popping up from time to time here and there, and so we shouldn't really be ignoring it. So I'd like to hear more about what everyone else thinks. And then, of course, we should then move over to Best Score, because that's really probably my number 1 category every year. I love that category so much, and I want to hear what you have to say. But song is really important. What does anyone else have any other thoughts? Because that's hurting my brain.
Well, I do have to correct you. You said yes and no about surprises in this category in Best Song, and I think you always just have to go with, are there going to be surprises in Best Song? Of course there are going to be surprises. There are always surprises in Best Song.
Yeah, you're right.
How they happen, they always do. I think that it would be interesting if Glass of Soju made it in, because that's going to be that would be one of those signs of Parasite just really doing well overall. And it just furthers that narrative that it doesn't matter which branch you belong to. There are people everywhere that like Parasite, and they want to reward every aspect of it. I think No Place, the Glasgow campaign is going to be kind of interesting to see how that works, because that's been very targeted. But I also have Stand Up from Harriet and the Rocket Man and Frozen 2 songs as well. So we'll have to wait and see how those work out.
Yeah, I mean, I really, really, really love Into the Unknown. It's not a second Let It Go, and Rob, you already said that. It's not the phenomenon that Let It Go was, but it's still incredibly popular. It's still in the zeitgeist. I'm quite surprised that it's not really the front runner to win. It might be the front runner in our odds, but I think the Rocket Man song is going to start gaining momentum after that Globes win. I really, really, really hope that Glasgow from Wild Rose gets in. I haven't even seen Wild Rose yet, but I listened to that song, and it would be such a great choice from that branch, to choose a song from this under-recognized movie. And Charlie, as you said, this song has really been targeted, and I think that might help it get into this category. So I'm really, really praying for that. But they throw curveballs at us all the time in this category, especially last year where they had the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. That they had that song nominated, for instance. So I don't feel confident with the top five, considering it's the Gold Derby top five as well. So one of them, or perhaps even two of them, will probably not end up making it.
It's too difficult. Let's just give up.
Okay. Yeah. Now, what about in best score? Charlie, you've got Us in 5th place.
Yeah.
And I saw Us,
brilliant.
hated the movie, loved the score though. Then I went online and found out the main theme is actually not original. So I don't understand how it's competing in this category. Do you have any comments about that?
Well, that's actually I didn't have it in this category until the shortlist came out, because that's how I realized that the music branch had not disqualified it. So I think that it's if a score is able to get in, is deemed eligible, then it's usually fine. Usually, like a couple of years, I guess almost 10 years ago, we had The Artist get an original score nomination and win the category, even though there's a part of the movie that takes the score directly from Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, and they try, and several other competitors that year tried to use it against The Artist, but it still ended up winning. So I think that that actually bodes well for Us. And you also look at, like, The Godfather, the original Godfather was excluded from, the nomination was rescinded from original score, and then 2 years later, The Godfather Part 2, which his score is insanely similar to the original Godfather, wins the category. So you just never know with these people sometimes. I think that 1917 and Joker are pretty much safe. Marriage Story and Little Women, I think, are below that, but it's still reasonably okay. But I think that Us would be an interesting final slot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would be a very inspired choice, because, all the love for Us, or all the admiration, has gone toward Lupita Nyong'o and the score. I think those are two of the best aspects of the entire movie, and that score, especially toward the end, that final piece. Yeah. I think it's been in the zeitgeist all year long, and I think it's an incredible score, and I would be so happy for it to be nominated. I agree that 1917 and Joker are way out in front. I actually switched to Joker now in number one, because after that Globe win, I do think she might be able to get more wins from now on, and it's an incredible score, but I wouldn't be surprised to see 1917 take it. I do have Little Women in because they love Alexandre Desplat. I'm quite surprised that some people are taking him out. They absolutely love him, and Little Women is still a contender, so I think he'll be nominated. I'm not sure about Marriage Story yet. I could see that one easily missing. And I do, of course, have Star Wars because it's John Williams, and they're going to give him that nomination.
It's a shame.
It's a shame. It is a shame, because it's nothing new, and that's the slot that Michael Abels could take for Us, and that's my big wish for nominations morning, is that they really embrace that movie. I'm just a bit scared because it's a horror movie, and the Academy does not like horror movies for some odd reason.
Yeah. So can I just comment on score just to get it off my chest, right? Because it's not really.
Please do.
All right. So here's the thing, right? I'm looking at what a lot of the other editors are predicting, and it seems a lot of us are predicting Marriage Story, and including myself for now, and I don't know quite why. Randy Newman is a brilliant composer, obviously, and the score is really good, but I just think there's so much better work this year, including Us, And I had the same thoughts that Charlie and Riley have just already said about its originality, but that theme from the beginning, we know when you see the rabbits in the cages, is not necessarily what is so good about that score. It's towards the end when Lupita just goes on a complete rampage. And sorry for spoilers, but that doesn't really mean anything. The score is so strong. I just saw it for the second time the other night, and it was the score that got me the most. I just couldn't believe how compelling it is, and it really should be nominated. But that being said, this is the argument I'm going to make for The King. So putting aside my bias for that film, because it is my number 2 film of the year, it really is my one. I just love that film so much. Because I love Joker even more, that's the only reason why The King is number 2 for me. But Nicholas Britell is having a very strong last couple of years. He's very much in like the zeitgeist because of his Succession work. I think composers have really taken to a lot of his work, obviously from If Beale Street Could Talk. I think he's probably one of the best composers working today. And I just have a feeling that if we are going to see something completely out of left field like we did last year in a couple of categories, it could be this. And so, like, chuckle as much as you like, but if it does happen, I am absolutely going to just lord it over everybody until the end of time, like I'm still doing for stupid shit that I predicted 10 years ago because I'm old now. And so I think Alexander Desplat is absolutely in. They love him. Joker is probably now going to... I think she's going to really give Thomas Newman a run for his money. We all thought he was going to get his makeup Oscar. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be her. I'm not going to take The King out. I'm going to leave it just as my no guts, no glory. And God help me, I will be very happy if that happens. I think it's a very... If you listen to the score as well, it's not just because of Nicholas Britell. It's actually a really, really, really good one. Even if you don't like the film itself, the score is very strong. So those films in the shortlist, they're all excellent. What a great list of scores to enjoy over this for us, Matt and I, for our summer to listen to on our iPhones. So there you go. That's where I am.
I do think another thing that's interesting about score, one we haven't talked about, is Jojo Rabbit. This is like, we're talking about how strong or weak is Jojo Rabbit going to be with nominations, or at least I mentioned that a few minutes ago. Well, this is a category where we have a shortlist, doesn't have The Irishman, doesn't have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, doesn't have Parasite, so it doesn't have some of those other big films. Like, surely, like, if Jojo Rabbit had strong support across the board at the Academy, this would be a category which it can sneak into. It's not got some of those other big Best Picture contenders. If love for Jojo Rabbit's bigger than Marriage Story, like more broad than Marriage Story in the Academy, maybe Jojo Rabbit gets in here at the expense of Marriage Story. And I think, like, Jojo Rabbit, because of its sort of whimsical style, does have a score that is differentiated from some of the other ones in the lineup. So, I really like to see that. Or like Us, like, it's a shame we don't see more horror films in this category because score is such an important element to the horror genre.
Yeah, I've got Jojo Rabbit. It was nominated for the BAFTA, and I would love to see Michael Giacchino nominated just once this decade. Okay, so I think we don't have time for the other 6 film categories, but does anyone have any final thoughts on sound or visual effects? Or production design? I don't know if we touched on.
Well, I guess production design, one to really look out for is Parasite, which seems to be, number 5, number 6 for most people. I actually have it in my 4th slot because everyone is talking about how they built that entire house. And as I said before, I think we can all agree that this will be a really strong contender and will have multiple nominations. And I just see this being one of those below the line categories where it actually gets in, and which will be just another signal of strength for the movie when it comes to its Best Picture chances. I think this is a very interesting category. I really hope it does get in. It'll be very interesting to see when it comes to the wins because we often see production design and costume design go hand in hand. So I'll be very interested to see which movies end up getting nominated.
Yeah. Well, just quickly, like that Parasite call is a good one. I think I have it in there as well because I just keep thinking that it's kind of like Roma in terms of the way that it's being viewed as it seemed like, I just think like we just need to realize that I think Parasite is probably going to maybe overperform a little, unlike it did after it didn't do so well below the line there. I don't think that the same thing will happen here. And I am looking forward to all the articles about how a Korean film from a director who's one of the greats, but a lot of people outside Korea aren't really that aware of him, is going to kind of be one of the big stories of Oscar morning. I really hope that happens. I think that would be a really interesting thing, a really interesting angle for us to read that morning.
Yeah, Parasite underperforming at the BAFTAs is not a good companion story to the all-white actors getting nominated. It's very unfortunate. Yeah. I look. I think 1917 is going to do very well across the board with technical categories. I think that, like, with sound and with production design and cinematography and all those sorts of things. So I think that's going to be, maybe, I don't know, could be the most nominated. I don't know what, yeah. Do people have an opinion on what the big story is going to be of Oscar nomination morning? What the big.
Well, I'm actually curious as to, for everyone, how many nominations do you have Parasite getting?
Yeah. I have it for 7, I believe.
I have it for 8.
For 8. Okay. I think it'll probably be around, 6, 7, 8. If it gets less than that, I think we might be able to call it an underperformance, though I'm not quite sure. But as we said, if it gets into categories like best song and best production design and some of those below, or best editing, if it gets into those below the line categories, then we really have to watch out for it in best picture. I'm not quite sold on it winning best picture yet, because there are, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and there's still 1917. There are these big movies that are competing as well, and I think have other aspects working in its favor. But if Parasite hits everywhere and then in categories that no one expects it to hit in, then I will actually consider it for Best Picture, for my number 1 spot.
What about everybody else? How many do you have?
I have it for 7. But I just need to have it for 7 for the ones that most of us are thinking will happen.
I can't tell that Riley's signing.
I have 8.
8? Okay, you have 8.
Okay. So it's going to do really well, or it's going to do just like it did at BAFTA, or it could just really get skunked completely. But I don't think it will. I think it will follow a similar trajectory like Roma, and eventually will not win, because we have the ghettoized category of international feature now, or always have had it, and that's why foreign films have never won. Maybe apart from the artist, which wasn't really the same thing. So I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm considering that I actually could move that total up, because I think that cinematography is on the table, and if I put it in there, then that would give it 9 nominations. That would be something.
Yeah, I've only got it for 4 at the moment, but I think through talking it through with you guys, and there's about 4 other categories which I'm very close to putting it in my predictions, and I probably, unless I come to the thoughts over the next day or two that I think it's going to just really strike out with the Academy, which I think I just think my gut is, with preferential voting, Parasite should do well, unless the Academy just does not like this film at all. Because it doesn't seem like people are lukewarm on Parasite. You either love the film, or, it doesn't hit the mark of you. So I just think with preferential voting, that's got to help it.
Matt. It sounds like you were kind of lukewarm.
Yeah, I guess I was, but I don't think I'm a typical, I don't know. Yeah, that is fair. But I feel like when I hear other people talk about it, it's, this is the best film of the year. This is incredible. People go, I haven't seen it. I didn't like it. I don't think Parasite's going to be 5th on a lot of ballots, right?
No, but I'm really glad that, Matt, you're saying that, because it gives us another perspective. I think you should stick to your guns totally. If it didn't work for you, then just because other people think it's a masterpiece means nothing. There's a few films that people have been raving about that I just think are complete trash, and so we just need to kind of. That's going to be really cool, because if Parasite underperforms, then that means a lot of Academy voters are thinking just like you are, and you've been around this radio quite a few times, and you know exactly what you're talking about. So we need to pay attention to what you're saying, because we are in this bubble, mate, and it's just so ridiculous. There's an echo chamber. Just like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, if you say anything negative about that, you get trashed on social media. I thought that was okay, but I didn't think it was that great. And when I do my own awards, it probably will get 3 nominations, because I thought it was really enjoyable, but that's it. And the same goes for Knives Out. Didn't work for me. The Farewell was okay. Marriage Story was really... Sorry?
Blasphemy.
Well, that's what there's the bubble once again. So like, but you know, I thought Joker was a masterpiece, and there are some people that just despise that film so desperately. And so all those thoughts and opinions are the same as they get in the Academy, right?
Yeah.
So how fascinating to see how this pans out next week.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's going to be films that overperform and films that underperform. And there's going to be, sometimes it's in a lot of areas, sometimes it's just one or two categories, but there's going to be some places where the Academy marches to the beat of its own drum. And we will find out what that is very soon.
Yeah.
All right. And with that, I will cut us off. So thanks for joining us as we discussed our final Oscar predictions, and you can still make yours on goldderby.com until the morning of nominations, which is this Monday.
Well,
Bye-bye. Is that it? Oh, that's right.
There's no
yeah.
We don't have a stop button.
You will have to like edit
I'll
this
just
up.
yeah.
Let's do
Oh, boy.
Fuck the Queen. Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh wow.